Hello, this is ASEAN Movie Pulse Talks. I am Panos Kotzathanasis, and I'm here with Real Zaveri. How are you, Real?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, I'm fine. Tonight we're gonna talk about the movie that should have got the Oscar for best for okay, just joking. Okay, we're gonna talk about Hidden Blade, the almost new Chinese blockbuster by Cheng Er, a film that reminds us a lot of good things of Hong Kong cinema of the past, I guess.
Mhm.
Let me start with the synopsis. The movie does not unfold in a linear way regarding the narrative. The initial scenes take place in the present, but the story then makes a big flashback to November 1937, the day after Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, move to the intense bombings of Guangzhou that lasted for about a year, and then settles in Shanghai until August 1945. It is in the last setting the majority of the story unfolds, where we are introduced to the main characters. Mr. He is the director of counter-espionage for the Japanese authorities in the area, but in reality he is a double agent who is helping the Chinese Communist Party special branch in Shanghai, whose members are recruiting, obtaining information, killing traitors, and trying to establish a broader united front. Mr. Ye is his right hand, essentially the main enforcer of the group, and a truly terrific and cold assassin who retains, though, a strange relationship with his fiancée, just as Mr. He does with his wife, Miss Chen. Mr. Zhang, Mr. Tang, and Mr. Wang, which I guess will remind you of Tarantino movies, the way this thing unfolds, are also members of the same group, but a sense of mystery regarding the true goals also surrounds them. All of them, however, seem to be terrified of the Japanese officer in charge of them. As the story progresses, the web surrounding all the protagonists becomes more and more entangled, while the evident loss of Japan in the world hangs above the heads of them all. So, Rhythm, what do we start with? What was the first thing that impressed you in the movie? I guess you liked it. Did you like it? First question, I guess.
I did indeed. Yes, I genuinely went into this one not expecting much. Because when this film was announced, it had a different name and it was supposed to be like a part of a trilogy of propaganda films coming out of mainland, wasn't it? So, and a mainland film uh, in the spy setting, which is supposed to be propaganda, you think it's not going to be uh, too much, right? So I went into this with very minimal expectations, and thankfully, it pleasantly surprised me with how good it was. The first thing that I would say that did impress me about the film was the atmosphere that it creates. This one of mystery and intrigue, as to you are not really sure with either any of the characters where their loyalties lie, and which side they are batting for. So that was the first thing. I will admit that for the first maybe 1 hour of the film, I was extremely confused because, as I said, I was completely blind with this one, so I had no idea that it's a non-linear narrative, and it, as you said, it keeps jumping from one timeline to the other before settling into a proper one. But after that 1 hour mark, it just completely everything just falls into place and makes so much sense. I was afraid that the film might not be able to tie itself properly together because it had spread itself so much wide, but it did, ultimately making so much sense with the whole narrative. So that was another impressive thing at the end of the film. And of course, the visuals, which I'm sure we will speak about in detail later on.
And in terms of propaganda, I would say, once more, the Japanese are the violent aggressors and the Chinese the victims. But I would not say that the film goes very far away in that regard. I mean, I mean, not the Chinese are also portrayed as bad people that also get the share of punishment. They're not just heroes who, in the end, win, as we have seen in many movies in the past. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I have talked about this film to a couple of people, and I've said that it's a propaganda film that's not really propaganda. In that sense, this film is not very much away from, say, a Korean film that you see in that setting. Even they have that Japanese people were evil and all of that. But apart from that, and obviously you have the good Chinese people and that kind of a thing. But apart from that, it's not very much a propaganda film. It's very much a spy thriller with a very noir setting and treatment to it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And okay, I guess whatever fault there is in the movie, essentially the quality of the visuals kind of hides everything, right? Because this is like top-notch
Yeah,
production in every aspect of the movie. What do you think?
absolutely. I was a big fan of Cheng Er's earlier film, The Wasted Times.
Mm-hmm.
So I had quite high expectations in that regards with this film, and thankfully it did not disappoint at all because the production values are amazing. The sets are the period setting of the film is wonderfully realized. The costumes that come with it, and especially when they are done, people like Tony Leung and Wang Yibu, they look amazing. The music as well with the cinematography, it just works so well uh, for to make a visual and auditory experience, a fantastic visual and auditory experience.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I guess we could say that Cheng Er implemented the budget he had, which is probably huge in the best way. I mean, you have like the different settings, like you even have the bombings in the beginning. Then you have all these interrogation scenes, which are
Right.
exquisitely shot, and you have action in the end and a bit of, I don't know, maybe I guess we cannot say exactly romance, but there is something about love in there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so this.
Yeah, the budget that think he had, most of it went into the production design of the thing because, as I said, the sets are gorgeous, and also the action sequences. I was very impressed with the way that the action was shot, especially that scene in the hotel when I don't want to really spoil it by saying who's fighting who, but if you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about, and that is an exquisitely shot action sequence. Also, since you mentioned the interrogation scenes, the very first scene that the film begins on, with Tony Lung, who is interviewing, we don't really know if he's a turncoat or if he's an informer or what's going on there. It very much reminded me of the opening of Tarantino's Inglorious Bastards. When Hans Landa goes to that shepherd's house, and that whole the tension that that scene had, I think it very much carried into this scene as well. So it was a nice little. I don't know if it was something that was intended, but it definitely reminded me of that. Very nicely done.
Mhm, mhm. I guess he has studied Tarantino, right? I mean, the naming of the characters is like Reservoir Dog style, the Mister and Mister and
Right,
Mister. Yeah, yeah. And also,
right,
I have to
yeah.
say that,
I would.
please, please.
No, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a definite influence. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. And I guess talking about big budget, because sometimes people forget about that, but actually having a big budget and implementing it in a way that benefits the film is not exactly an easy thing to do, because we see many movies that just spend money for no reason or in huge set pieces and they lose control of the narrative, let's say, no substance for style. But this is not the case here. Like Chenger really knew what he was doing. And okay, you said that okay, the biggest budget probably went to the set pieces and SFX, but I guess also I don't think that the protagonist got a few. I don't think the protagonist got a little money out of that, or did it for the goodness of their hearts, you know.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
No, yeah, it definitely shows every aspect of that film does show that a fair amount of money has been spent behind it, right from the very first scene all the way to the final ones.
Hmm, hmm. And how do you think about the performances here? Which one is best?
Uh, 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 Obviously, I have to give it up for Tony Lung. That guy can
Yeah.
do no wrong for me, you know. And he had a great year, didn't he? He had the award at Busan. Last week, he had that award at the Asian Film Awards as well. And, you know, to back it up with two excellent performances in The Wind, Where the Wind Blows, or whatever that film is called, and this one, you know, his the duality that he brings to the role, you're not really sure, you know, at least up until a point as to where, you know, which team he's on. And he does that excellent. Even the action sequences that are demanded of him, you know, he performs quite well in those as well. Also, Wang Yibu, I'm sure a lot of Wang Yibu fans are watching this video just to listen to us talk about him. And I think he was actually pretty good. You know, I still thought he could have been a little bit better in places, but you know, he stood head and shoulders next to Tony Lung and gave an impressive performance. You know, he's supposed to be this really cruel, really evil person. You know, and fans of his are probably gonna have a bit of a hard time seeing him in that kind of a role. But you know, kudos to him. He made me believe that he could be that evil.
Mm-hmm. And what did you think about the Japanese guy? I felt that the scenes that he is in are the most nervous, let's say, in the film. The most angst are there because you can feel the fear of the people surrounding him.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's kudos both to the actor who did a fine job in pretty much every scene that he was in, and also to the writing as well. You know, because these conversations that you mentioned with the other people are just so fascinating to watch. You know, and the actor, I forget his name right now, but he was excellent in it.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, like the scene when he asks Tony Leung, where did you get the food from? And
Yes.
yeah, this is just a very small scene with nothing particularly important about it, but it sets the tone in the best way, right? Again, I felt that this is Tarantino style of filmmaking, just people talking and you get like so much out of it. Like you can feel the danger of
Right.
what is happening there, which is really impressive.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. He, I That scene between him, Tony Lang, and the third guy, I forget the character's name now.
Hmm.
Slightly somewhere in the middle of the film. That was another scene where I felt that the Japanese actor was on his A game, because you could see even us as an audience felt a bit squeamy for Tony Lang's character in that.
Hmm. Hmm. Truth be told, when I was writing the review of the film like a month ago, his name was nowhere to be found. I don't know
Right.
why. Why? I guess the people who
Right.
promoted wanted to focus on the Chinese. Because I'm not sure
Right.
even of his nationality, but anyway,
Hmm.
he does his work is great in this film.
No, I do think he's definitely a Japanese actor, because I do
Yeah.
remember looking for his name in the end credits, and there was a Japanese name
Uh-huh.
for sure, but you know, I am not sure if it was his or somebody else's, but it was probably his and is probably Japanese, but I don't think I have seen him anything before or since.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, and okay, you mentioned in the beginning that the film is a bit confusing, at least in the beginning. Well, I guess this is kind of Hong Kong cinema of the past style that we
Hmm.
don't care that much about what is going on, if you know the
Right.
logic of it. But would you say
Right.
that in the end it gets over it? Or, I mean, because the ending is also a bit confusing, I guess. You know what happened, but this scene back in Shanghai, you're not sure, is
Yeah.
this a dream? Is this reality? What is happening here? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, in terms of the Hong Kong cinema flashbacks, yes, definitely, I would agree. But especially with the scenes in the beginning, where the confusion really comes from, I think that was very much intended on Cheng Er's part. He did wanted to throw the audience off with the time jumps and with the non-linear narrative. But when it does come back into when the audience does realize that, okay, now we are in a non-linear narrative, and when the earlier scenes, like the one with the interrogation that I mentioned where the film begins, when it falls into the timeline of the overall narrative, everything just connects perfectly. I think I was afraid that it might not, but every scene in the beginning ended up making sense, and that was something that I wouldn't necessarily say that the Hong Kong cinema of the past uh, used to do sometimes, but this one does it quite well. In terms of the ending as well, I did have to watch it a couple of times. I had to go
Mm.
back to a certain scene and then go back to it. And when I did, I think it again made a little bit more sense to me. But you're right, as you said, it does ever so slightly confuse you and leave you like, hang on a minute, is what I am thinking right, or did something else happen?
Okay. And well, I guess we have to talk about, there are some faults in the movie. I don't know. I feel like, okay, maybe the role of women is quite played down. I don't know what you think about that. Again, this is
Absolutely.
Tarantino filmmaking of the past. Like Reservoir Dogs is right there. Yeah.
Right,
But
right,
what do you think?
absolutely. No, I fully agree with that. The women characters were just mere tokens in this one, which is in stark contrast to something like the Wasted Times, because Zhang Zi's role in that one was fabulous. So he knows how to deal with female characters, but having an actress like Zhao Xin in that role and still having such a minor part, throwaway part, or just as a device to further the male characters' storylines, I think was a bit of a mistreatment to the characters. Even the fiance's character, Wang Yibu's fiance, that was also, she had, felt a better storyline than Zhao Xun's, but even then it was very minuscule, wasn't it?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Any other fault you found?
Uh, no, the only thing that
Mm.
I would have liked for it to do was, you know, as I said, it takes you up until the 1 hour mark for everything to make sense.
Mm.
Of course, he has a wider story to tell you, and he does tie it all up. But if it had started making, because there is a large section of the audience that it might lose because of its confusing approach to its storytelling in the beginning. So if it had started making sense a little bit earlier, it would have maybe worked better. But it's okay. It's not a big issue for me because when it does make sense, it falls into place perfectly. The other thing that I felt is the ending. It could have been etched out a little bit strongly, and the revelations that come at the end, which is supposed to be this big twist, it could have been played a little bit better, and that could have maybe had a more lasting impression of the ending for me.
Hmm. Hmm. And also regarding the ending, I feel at some point it became a bit too melodramatic. Like there were some moments there that it went that way, I guess, which didn't.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it wasn't necessary. But again, then we have to consider that this is, or at least it was meant to be ultimately a Chinese propaganda film, wasn't it?
I guess.
So it has diverted from the formula for too long. So probably you had to throw in that little bit for the appeasement. Maybe I'm not really sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, okay. Well, let's say, okay, well, I guess if you put a rating in the film out of 10, what would you go for?
On my letterbox, I actually rated it 4 out of 5. So
Yeah.
because purely because it surprised me with how good it was, how it was completely away from what I expected from it, and how its craft was amazing. The acting was amazing as well, especially Tony Leung's, the Japanese actors, and Wang Yibu to an extent as well. So all of that played nicely for a very well-rounded, entertaining watch, and 4 out of 5 it was for me.
Yeah. I guess it is the same for me, and also because I think it's a great combination of style and substance. He managed that in a great way, and yeah, there are no like really significant flaws in the film. Even what you just mentioned they don't ruin everything. The experience is great, and
Exactly.
please.
Sorry, go on.
And I definitely felt that it's one of those films that you need to see in a cinema, in a big screen. It's definitely one of those productions.
I fully agree. It did get a excuse me, it did get a release in the United States, so the Americans were a bit luckier than we are, I guess, But if it's playing anywhere near you, then you have to go see it on the big screen, because the production values, they are going to be well worth the price of admission alone. And also, just a little bit of note on Cheng Er. You have to hand it to him for because the propaganda film has a certain expectations, a certain formula to follow. But he was just so far away from it for the longest time in this film. While still staying stuck to that nationalist sentiment of it. It's something that I don't think many directors can manage, and this guy did it quite impressively.
I think that initial confusion you mentioned was maybe to confuse the censorship board also. I guess they didn't understand. They understood the
Absolutely.
melodramatic ending, but they didn't understand the beginning, so everything worked out for everyone.
Quite possibly, quite possibly. Yes. As long as the film thankfully released in the way that it released, and whatever changes he was asked to make. Maybe the melodramatic ending was something that he was asked to add on
Yeah,
by the
maybe.
censor board. Who
Yeah,
knows?
you never know. You
But
never know.
but it's fine. It doesn't really
Mhm.
harm the overall enjoyment of the film at all.
Do you see it screening in India?
Absolutely not.
Same
I
for
mean,
Greece, I guess. Yeah,
yeah.
no chance
I
of.
mean, we have this phone app where you can book tickets on, and there's this section where you can see coming soon films that are coming soon, and Broker was on there for the longest of times, and I was very excited for the date. I just kept checking if the advance bookings were coming on, and when that date actually came on, it didn't come to my city at all. And even all over India, I think it only came to like 2 or 3 cities. So if a film like Broker, which has got an award, that can or whatever, if that can't get a
Mm.
wide release, Hidden Blade is never getting a release
Yeah,
here. No.
yeah.
Also, the whole it's a Chinese film, isn't it? And the whole
It's a problem.
India-China
Yeah,
thing. Yeah. So yeah.
which is also the reason why it doesn't make the festival run, I
Right.
guess. Yeah. It's
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay. Thankfully, Well Go USA is releasing it in US at least, so
Mm.
some people there are going to see it on the big screen. Apart from, okay, considering that it has screened in China, probably a couple of hundred of million people have seen it. So it's not like no
Yeah.
one's going to watch the movie. Yeah.
Exactly. No, good on Well Go USA for championing its release in the US, because it's definitely a film. Sometimes they pick up films that go straight to physical media, but this is definitely a film, as we said, that deserves to be seen on the big screen. So big up Well Go USA for bringing it there.
Mhm. Well, I guess that's it. Since we mentioned Well Go USA, after this video, you can watch the trailer of the movie exclusively from Well Go USA. And from us, from Panos, Kotzathanasis, and Zaveri, this was another ASEAN Movie Pulse Talks, and see you soon. Bye.
So yeah.